Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lords of Limited. My name is Ben Warney, and joining me on the line, as always, Mr. Ethan, Carrot, Cake, Sacks. The card of the week, the card of the format. What's not to say? What can't this card do?
Let them eat carrot cake, have a slice of carrot cake. This card takes the cake. I mean, the episode titles, the possibilities are endless, really.
The possibilities are endless. Do you know there's like a song? I don't know if this is just me or a thing my mom sang, but it goes like, carrot stew, it's my favorite thing to do. Something like that.
It's not
a thing. Anytime
yeah.
I see carrot cake, I sing that song in my head, and it's quite annoying.
Do you say carrot cake or you say
I do say carrot cake? Yeah, I just say carrot cake and then hum the little melody thing. Yeah,
it's powerful. Jingles are a powerful thing. They're just they're in your brain right there. Ben, do you want to talk about this card now, or should we save it for later? Do you want to let your blood pressure ramp up a little bit? We
should save it for later because I think it'll be an extended conversation. I think it needs to be more than just the 3 or 4 minute intro, or we can get into it.
I told Ben I'm wearing my Magicians Against Data shirt as a peace offering to him today because I did use a lot of 17 lands game and hand win rate stuff from the first few days of the format as like a baseline to sort of check where I was at for the show notes today. So I didn't want Ben to think I'm not all data pilled. You know, I still have my own thoughts.
I don't know. Certainly in the show notes, seems like you might be data pilled. And I am also sporting my Magicians Against Data t-shirt to not in solidarity with you or Data. I'm fired up about
You are fired
how
up.
much I do not like Data or Carrot Cake being the number 1 game in hand win rate card in the format.
It's Seral's Packmate 2.0, baby. We have a lot. Sorry. We have a lot to talk about, and it's week 1 of the format. We got our hands on it. Got to get into some sealed yesterday, actually, because there's the qualifier. I did the qualifier for the qualifier next weekend, so I'll be playing in that. But yeah, just played with a lot of the format this week and have a lot of my own thoughts when I check it in comparison to what seems to be successful for the broader 17 lands community, and then get into how we're navigating draft. So a lot to get through for week 1 here in the format. First things first, let's chat about the Patreon page, patreon.com/Lords of Limited, where folks can go to give back to the show if they so choose. But we got a lot of great perks over at the Patreon page. Base level that everybody gets access to is the Discord. It's hopping, it's popping, 24/7 limited tech support. We also have some great perks as you move up the reward tier rankings. One of the things I want to shout out is the early access to the episode, a day early ad-free. It's awesome. You just get that injected right into your podcast feed a little bit early. Get that knowledge. You just get to hear this. Imagine you're listening to this and you're like, I could have been listening to this yesterday. I could have already listened to this. Isn't that
the tech a day ahead of everyone else?
Could have gotten it a day ahead of everyone. So it's just some good stuff, and you get to show your love for the show, which is also much appreciated. Like these fine folks that we're going to shout out who are joining our Patreon for the first week. So we're going to welcome Angel, Michael, Scott, Jacob, Josh, Drew, Wesley, Oscar, Garrett, Tom, and TY. Thank you. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah, we can't say thank you enough, and we really appreciate those folks subscribing to the Patreon, and you should be too.
All right. I got to say, I had pretty low expectations going into the format this week, and it's sweeter than I initially thought. I do think there is some cooking to be done. A lot of the build around Ds that I was giving Fs, I think actually have some legs, some niche weight to them. I've done some builder's talent stuff. I've done some stocking the pantry stuff. There's sweetness to be had. But I think the real thing you should be doing is the streamlined 2-color archetypes that get in the lane, do the thing. And getting those nutso versions of those specific decks has also been really sweet, as expected.
Yes, but that's about all there is to do. There's just not a ton of offering. I feel similar to how we felt last week, and I already feel myself getting bored with the format because it's so prescribed. Paint by number that you said last week was the perfect way to describe it. And there's only so many times you can pop off with squirrels or get popped off on by squirrels before it starts to get a little old. And I think the thing that is annoying to me about, I do agree there are other things to do in the format, but even if you get there on those, they just have no chance against a streamlined version of the premium 2-color archetypes. I don't think
they don't have no chance, but I hear there is a significant
there's a significant gap.
And you shouldn't. It's not
versus a good 2-color deck. It's not you're still like what 70-30 or something. I mean, like
Right.
it's a large gap, 60-40.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not great. Yeah, you're right. Like you really it's not like you see a builder's talent and you go, oh, I'm gonna do a builder's talent deck. Like that's something you happen to get into when it's like, well, these synergies are stronger than just going straight green white rabbits or whatever.
Yes, I think, and one of the things that's changed for me though this week of the format is it's almost felt more core setish to me, and that I think a staple of core sets is that you're generally more vulnerable to screw and or flood because there's less ways to mitigate card advantage or mitigate card filtering, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are ways to do that in this format, and some of them are from less good cards, but I think you still need to run some of those cards to try to avoid screw and flood. I think that is one of the places, assuming you're buying into two color format, trying to pop off with the two color synergies. I think one of the next best ways to try to get an edge in the format is trying to mitigate screw and flood.
Now, are you just talking about like putting divinations in your deck or what?
Divinations, Carrot Cake does help in that department as a point in its favor. The scrying does matter in the late
Mm-hmm.
game. Stuff like Stargaze, like a big card draw spell
Yeah.
or two, and or making sure that your synergy packages in frogs, like making sure you've got a few pawn profits so that when you hit that Tide Splash Mentor, you can draw your deck or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Just making sure that you have mana sinks, and there are mana sinks, true mana sinks in the format, but we really suffer from drawing lands 7, 8, and 9 unless you're already popping off in the frogs deck or something like that. And I don't think the uncommon lands are the way to go about it.
Oh my god. I had a really awesome frogs deck as I think my first draft on MTGO this week. So they're the best of 3 queues on Arena were down for a few days, so I was streaming on MTGO because I wanted to play best of 3. And I was in the finals with this great frogs deck, like mostly green again. The only blue land I had was the blue village in play, and I had 2 Lily Splash Mentors, and I couldn't activate either of them. And like, not only was I tilted at myself for losing the game because of this stupid land, but I'm getting tilted by Twitch chat being like, why aren't we blinking? Why aren't you blinking? And then my
Double whammy.
and then my opponent, after they won that, I lost that game too because of that, and then I lost game 3 of the for the
They
trophy.
asked you why you weren't blinking?
And they tanked before winning to message me like, hey, you could have won game 2 if you had just blinked with your Lily Splash Mentors. I was like, I'm gonna die.
That's so good.
So I'm just at war with the village lands. I'm just never playing them again.
They're truly horrible. Like, when the first time you look at your opener of like swamp, forest, cash grab, whatever, and you can't cast the cash grabs and have to mulligan, like, they're just so bad.
Yep. Yeah. I keep trying to like think about, I was like, oh, I'm base like very heavy black. I'm going to include the black village. And then I was like, wait, no, I have the, what's it called? Cruel Claws Heist, like black discard spell rare. I was like, I can't play this. Like, I can't put a black source in my deck that can't cast my black discard spell. Anyway, yeah, I'm totally off of those. Okay, so yeah, so I agree with that. One of the cards you listed a little later, I think goes in this slot, is Heirloom Epic, the 1 mana artifact, and you can pay 4 mana, tap it to draw a card, and you can basically convoke that cost, right? Tap creatures instead of paying mana or as a supplement to paying the mana. Are you a fan of that card?
I am in green white specifically because I don't
Yeah.
think green and white is great at filtering cards and is
Yeah.
very prone to like a great beatdown deck, but prone to flooding out, I think, in the late game. And Heirloom Epic solves that problem. And even if you're paying 3, like, I think green white is pretty happy to sign up for an artifact that can go like 2 or 3 tap, draw a card.
Yeah, I definitely have. I've seen it do nothing and be like 9 mana divination, and I have also like had it in the exact deck you're talking about. Had it in a rabbit's deck and been like, I would have lost this game. Like, what did it drew me like 4 or 5 cards? I think it's like very much how many like Head of the Homesteads or Hop to Its you have makes that card a lot better.
Yes, but both it and Stocking the Pantry give green ways to not flood out in non-green blue decks.
Which is great because green needs more juice
support, yeah.
in this format.
What a color.
I have really, I mean, this format, you want to have comps to other formats or just like baselines or whatever. This has reminded me of Zendikar Rising quite a bit in the sense of like there were the streamlined kindred decks, like you were doing clerics or whatever, right? So Zendikar Rising had the D&D party stuff, and then there were party decks where you were like trying to get a mixture of those things. And I do think, and this is again like, yes, one is better than the other. There is like the clear, like your blue green frogs or your blue black rats. But as we talked about last week, then there is also like you can do blue black control or blue black spells or whatever, or you could do green white sort of like builder's talent rather than doing and thinking about like food and stuff, and have like a half rabbit, half squirrel's life that is more about those non-creature permanents entering than it is about this like, kindred beatdown deck. I think there are different ways to build those decks, or maybe it's sort of a like 1 in 10 drafts type of thing, but you want to be aware of those opportunities.
Yes, but I think in going after those, you can also end up in spots where you're like half of one thing, half of another, or not quite all in. Like it's very important, I think, to be trying to maximize whatever you decide to go after.
Yes. And I also feel like this is a note for myself, but I have to imagine some of our listeners also like to feel smart and do cute things in the format. And I also find myself like doing that to the detriment of like, oh, I could have just drafted a good blue green frogs deck instead of trying to do this like blue green self mill loop D. Like, it's like, no, there was a frogs deck you could have drafted. Why didn't you do that? It's like, well, because I want to do something sweet. But like, the sweet stuff should be an off ramp rather than the on ramp.
Yes. So can we talk about green? Because we said it was the best color last week, and it's the best color by miles. Like it's so good. I mean, white is good as well. Like it's green and white, gap,
Black,
black,
gap.
gap, giant gap, chasm, and then blue and red, like bringing
Yeah.
up the rear pretty hard. Probably red ahead of blue still. I don't know. It sounds like you maybe think red is a little bit worse.
Yeah, I don't like red, but that's partially just because like, and we'll get into this in a little bit when we talk about what the 17 lands data has revealed to us or has to say about what's people are having success with. Red black is not a deck I'm a huge fan of currently. What's your experience? Like, I know I came in, I was like, I'm all about it because I liked the Scales of Shale trick and like, but I feel like with black white light, like I think it's a good deck, but it just sort of has a rock paper scissor thing against black white life gain. I don't see how it ever beats that deck. And green has so much food running around and has the ways to spend mana on it. And I just don't see how red black get them dead like wins the game when your opponent starts at like 26 or 29 life.
The ways I've lost it, I do like it as a deck. I have not piloted yet, but I've played against a lot of good versions of it on the best of one ladder. And the way I lose to it, and I've lost to it pretty handily, even playing green black or black white, is that when it's on the play or when they get off to a fast start, you just have to make such bad blocks or bad decisions to try to stay alive. Like I think more than any other, that deck and red white are capable of putting you in positions where you're just making impossible choices of how to block and then getting blown out as a result of it. And I think red black more than red white has tools to grind into the late game as
Yeah,
well.
that's
Like,
why.
and kind of gets well statted creatures like the red black hybrid card. That's the 3/2 that can come down as a 4/3 and get menace. Like that, there's just so much menace running around to where they like in the late game they might just have piled up 4 or 5 menace creatures plus a few other creatures and then can just crush you in 2 turns with a couple tricks.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. That makes sense. I mean, I'm not like writing the deck off or anything, but that's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of red. And I've liked blue black a lot, which is why I like blue more than red currently. But yeah, I agree with those like rankings and gaps, like green, then white, then black, and blue and red are in a significantly lower tier.
But I think green especially, and I think we kind of talked about this last week, but it gets the best cards, period. It gets the best synergies across all of its colors, except maybe red green, but red green's still a great deck and can smack you around. And then it also gets the best bleed between the synergies. Like you can just be green your
Yeah.
first 8 picks, and then later figure out whether you're going into squirrels or frogs or raccoons or rabbits. Like, it gets all the best hybrid cards and all the best cross synergy bleed.
That's the thing about like Baker's Bane Duo as being such like a all-star common is like, yeah, it's a squirrel and a raccoon, and so like you're how you want it in black green, and it makes a food. Like, you're just playing it anywhere.
It's just a great
You're
card.
just
It's just a
playing it in
great
green white.
Magic
You're
the
playing
Gathering
it
card.
in yeah. Like no one cares. Any green deck is playing that card.
Yes.
No, I'm totally with you. And I mean, it gets a lot of like mythic uncommons. Was that Hunter's Talent, the fight spell? I believe someone I saw on Twitter called that Doomblade that also wins you the game. Like, yeah, kind of true. It's no longer Doomblade draw a card. It's just Doomblade win the game. That card is ridiculous. Picking
Well,
that
and
card
Cash
up,
Grab can get it. Like,
Cash
Cash
Grab
Grab
can get it,
finds it
and you can pick it up with
with the 3/2, the
yeah,
Forager.
no, and also the 3/3 frog, the
Oh,
reach one
yeah. The
can
lick
pick it
splitter,
up.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sticky
yeah.
tongue. Yeah, like it's just so sick. So yes, I agree. Green gets a lot of goodies in the format.
I did think white is next best, pretty clearly, and I think its 2 best decks are green white and white black. But I think red white is really strong too when it comes together. Like, I think it's red white is less good in the arena best of 1 metagame, but I've played on MTGO some as well, playing some best of 3, and red white's been a bit of a menace there when it comes together. Like, I've beaten it, but I've beaten it with black green and black white, where I've also gained like 12 life in addition to my starting 20, and I'm hanging on by a thread the entire time, you know?
Yeah, I feel like red white. If you're talking about like explosive starts that red black can have, I feel like red white's explosive starts are way scarier than red black's in my mind. Because I've experienced that for sure. Like, I don't particularly like red white as a deck, but I've seen it do its thing, and it's really scary when it does.
But I think more of it is just it being red white beatdown than red white valiant. Like, it's not like you
Yes.
don't particularly care about the valiant synergies. You're just playing red white great aggro cards.
Right. Yeah. And you might happen to have that stuff, right? You've got your Raccoon Rally or giving stuff haste, and that is incidentally also triggering your Valiant on your good cards, but it's not
The
something where you're going out of your way to take. You're not taking any hits in pick order or power level to grab Valiant enablers or whatever.
Right. And but the issue for me with all of those decks, and I do love blue black as well. I've had a lot of fun playing blue black decks. Blue black, black red, and red white are good decks, but the problem is you don't get to take green cards. Like, that's the
Yeah.
issue for me. Is like, I feel terrible starting down a path that is not trying to get into green, because I think green is just head and shoulders above the other colors, and I'm just miserable when I'm passing Hunter's Talents or whatever in pack
Right.
3, you know, like, and those colors also, in addition to green, suffer from the problem of, like, your red black, and maybe you're seeing black cards that don't go in your red black deck, or your blue black and you're seeing blue and black cards that are for squirrels, you know, or frogs. Like, if you're green, you're likely to be able to use the good cards in some capacity, and some
Yeah.
of the non-green archetypes really suffer from, well, the packs didn't quite break my way in pack 3.
Yes. That's what I was talking about the other week. I'm glad you've experienced that kind of feeling, but maybe you were just playing green so
I was
much
just playing
that
green, like,
yeah,
yeah. But
so
I
it doesn't
have played
happen.
non-green decks now, and it feels really bad when the packs don't break your way. And I think green largely avoids that issue.
That's a really good shout. I hadn't thought about things that way. Like, I hadn't thought about what green lets you do in that sense, that it helps mitigate the feel bads that you can have in pack 3.
Yes, and I think white to some extent is that as well. Black, blue, and
Yeah.
red. Black, blue, and red much less so.
I want to chat about a few individual cards before we get into like re-examining or checking our guts against what 17 lands game in hand win rate has to say. Where are you at with Fountain Port Bell? The 1 mana artifact can top a land, and then you pay 1 mana to sack it and draw a card.
Hot Garbaggio. You should never put this card in your deck, and you shouldn't be splashing in the format.
I agree with shouldn't be splashing in the format. I do think it is largely like I have been playing it less as a splash enabler and more as a threshold enabler. Like, just for one Fountain Port Bell replaces my 17th land in blue black decks.
So bad.
I think that's like pretty free. I think that's actually a good idea.
I don't know. That card is tough. I've had some bad experiences with it. I much like you in the uncommon lands, I have a no Fountain Pork Bell clause for myself.
Okay, that's fair. Well, I wanted to throw that out there. I think less so in black-green decks. It can be like a third of a forage as well in that sense. But I'm less excited about it there. But I think in blue-black, it's real.
Okay. A couple other cards that we haven't talked about yet. Crumb and Get It, the white combat trick, white instant +2/+2. You can gift a food, and if you do, your creature gets indestructible. It's impossible to play around this card.
Yeah.
For you or your opponent. Like, you can peg them on Crumb and Get It, and it's still going to crumb and get you. Like, it is very difficult to beat.
Yeah. I mean, I just have your voice in the back of my head when I see, or when I know my opponent has that card. It's just like, you're going to trade with this at some point. Just like, do it now. Like, get it out now before they get to leverage it even more.
Yes. And Savor is another one. This is 1 in a black instant, -2/-2, make a food. This is kind of synergistic removal, and it does suffer from like not getting the 3 toughness things, and there are some really good 3 toughness things running around, but this is one of the best cards that you can have when you're matched up against an aggro deck. If you're against black-red, or if you're against red-white, it just puts the hammer down on those decks so hard when your turn 2 play is kill your thing, make a food. You just have so much more breathing room.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a big miss from us. Like, most of the cards that are being considered as top commons, either by us or by 17 lands, we have discussed in the past couple weeks, except Savor. And Savor's been really good.
Yeah. Longstalk Brawl's another one. This, as if green needs more help. Single green, sorcery, you can have target creature fight an opposing creature, so just prey upon at its base value. And then if you gift them a tapped fish, I believe, you get a +1/+1 counter on your creature before they fight. And this is just insane in every green deck because green's creatures are just bigger than everything else's. And if they happen to not be bigger, you can also then, for still a single mana, give your thing a +1/+1 counter before it fights. And this is what, green's 7th best common, 8th best common? Like, and it's so good still.
Yeah, it's a really well, and it's better than Polywallop for some green decks, right? Like, Squirrels wants Longstalk Brawl over Polywallop all the time. The cheapness on this card just like cannot be understated. Like, the fact that you get to just go like, whatever, maybe you're doing multiple things on your turn 5, turn 6, and then you get to do this with your leftover mana. It's just really strong.
I'm predisposed to have a hatred of green fight cards, or green bite cards, starting back in Ikoria. What was that card? Ram through.
Yeah.
Oof, hated Ram through. But like, Longstalk Brawl is the real deal. It's very good.
It's very good. All right, so I put together the lists of what 17 lands is calling.
I appreciate you saying
I'm doing this. Ben has no interest in talking about this. This was more just a way for me to, like, as I said, a gut check, just to be like, what is my experience cross-checked with what 17 lands is telling people is the best cards by game and hand win rate. And largely, I'm not surprised by anything. Now, I know Ben has a huge problem with Carrot Cake being number 1. Carrot Cake is currently the number 1 game and hand win rate common in the set. That's the 1 in a white food, makes a rabbit. When it comes in, you scry 1, and when you sack it, you get to do the same thing. And you can pay 2 to sack it as a food to gain 3 life. I just to be clear, I do not think this is the common, like the best common to pack 1, pick 1 in the format either. I'm just like, I shouted this out as being a good card, and I'm not surprised, as like you already talked about, like it does some hand smoothing stuff. Like, it's, as we talked about, it being like the gluiest of glue cards. I'm not surprised that this card is performing well. You seem to have some rage about this, or sorry, I won't lead the witness, but I'll say, Ben, what would you like to say about Carrot Cake, if anything?
Well, to give the podcast folks some backstory, here's how I found out that Carrot Cake was the number 1 common on 17 land. I touched into Ethan's stream, popped in as I often do, just to say hello, what's up? And chat was going nuts about Carrot Cake. There was a lot of Carrot Cake, Cerul's Packmate being thrown around, a lot of Carrot Cakes.
Purely to get under your skin, and it worked.
No, that was happening before I started. Your Twitch chat was waxing poetic about how good Carrot Cake was before I ever even popped my head and said hello. Now, did it continue and ramp up after I joined the conversation? Absolutely. Yeah. It was happening before I got there. So I was first of all blown away that this was the number one card in game in hand win rate, and as a result was like, oh, I hate data, data's stupid, blah 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 blah, as you would expect me to do per my
Yeah.
data heal status. But there's several issues here. I do think much of your one of them is mine, but one of the issues is
ask.
Yes.
Do any of the issues
yes,
come from your brain?
Yes, one of the issues involves me. I am one of the issues. The second issue is that what was happening in your Twitch chat was a bit hyperbolic and a bit jazzed up because people were doing it to poke me.
Yeah.
But a lot of people actually feel that way. And should not, I think. And if you start picking Carrot Cake highly, like it is the number one game in hand win rate common, or Cash Grab as the number two game in hand win rate common, those are not the first and second best cards in the set. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who are like, well, Ben, nobody thinks that. You should use the data healthily. But people don't. And I think Carrot Cake does do a lot of things well. I would say only belongs in white, black, and white, green. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And is at the top of the data because white, black, and white, green are two of the best archetypes, two of the top four archetypes in the format. And so it's getting pulled up by other good cards. And then, but there are things it does well that are important that are probably also leading it to be towards the top, which is the scrying is good. Like both of those color pairs are vulnerable to flood, and this helps mitigate that in the late game. But all of that being said, it's still wild to me that it's number one, so it has to be doing more than I would give it credit for, but it's still so small ball. Like 2 mana to get a 1/1 is not a good rate against green decks in this format. Like when I go Baker's Bane Duo into my 3/4 Bramble Guard veteran or whatever it's called, and then expend 4 the next turn, and your turn 2 play was Carrot Cake, crack my Carrot Cake or whatever, like you're dead.
Here's my question to you to go back to.
You just have your psychologist face on. You're like rubbing the chin here.
I am gonna therapize a little bit
you're
here.
Very introspective right now.
I just like. As I said to you on Friday in the stream, I was like, and are those people who think that in the room with us right now? Like, I just don't know why you have to be mad on behalf of people misinterpreting the data. Like, I think you should just be focused, like, be like, look, let those people are going to do what they're going to do. You can't help them. You're trying your best here on your podcast, but like, if they can't be helped, they can't be helped. And like, it's just information for you. As you already said, you're like, but the fact that it's number one probably means it's doing more than I'm even giving it credit for right now, which that's the part that is just interesting to me. Like, that's why I'm like, like I already thought Carrot Cake was pretty good. I'm not going to pick Carrot Cake over Intrepid Rabbit in my white pick order currently, just because the game in hand win rate data is telling me to, but I am interested that it's doing so well. And that probably means that like, even if I liked it, it's got to be up there. Like I don't think you have Banishing Light on your personal list of top 10 commons, and you don't have Carrot Cake. I think this data makes me say, look, I think Intrepid Rabbit's still pretty nutso, the 3/2 for 3 that has Offspring 1. I'm going to take that over Carrot Cake personally, but I might start taking Carrot Cake over Banishing Light personally.
That would be tough for me to do. And so I think here's how the data hits me, because this is the other thing that tilts me about data. And again, one of the problems in the room is me. It's like, hi, my name's Ben. I have a problem with data. But when I got into your chat, before I was piping up, people were talking like, oh, yes, we knew Carrot Cake was wonderful all along. Like, if I hadn't seen the data, I would not be surprised when Carrot Cake was coming around on the wheel. Or I would not be surprised seeing Carrot Cake pack 1, pick 8. And people on Twitch were like, oh, how could we possibly be wheeling Carrot Cake? Like, what's going on? This card's amazing. And it's not. Like,
you're mad that like people get to pretend it's like when someone, like when you watch Jeopardy with someone and then they go, oh no, the answer is this, and they go, oh yeah, I knew that. And you're like, why didn't you say it 2 seconds ago? But I go back to like, why do you care? Why are you mad about that? Those people don't affect you.
Yeah, they kind of do, because I stream and I'm a content creator, though. Like, they're trying to engage with me.
But you see through it. But like, you already know the game. You know that they didn't know that Carrot Cake was good before someone told them. and could prove it. So then, like,
but I also don't think that it's that good. Like, there's that wrapped up in there too. Like,
yeah,
there's so many layers
this
of
is the part. Layers like a carrot cake.
carrot cake. There
All
you
right.
go. Got him.
Let's get. I think we've lost enough listeners with this segment of the show. So back to this. What 17 Lands is telling us, or what the game and hand win rate rankings are: Carrot Cake, Cash Grab, Savor, Intrepid Rabbit, Scales of Shale at number 5. But you were nice enough to point out that this has about half as many games played as the other cards that are at the top of this list. So that makes the Scales of Shale thing was really surprising to me, because I was like, doesn't this only go in one deck? Are you playing Scales of Shale outside of Red Black?
Yeah, it's good.
Are you like, do you need any lizards? Like, are you playing it in black green, no lizards? Are you playing in black white, no lizards?
I have before as like a 23rd type
Okay.
card, just because the swing, when it hits, the swing is huge.
Yeah. Okay. So I might look for it there. Baker's Bane Duo 6th, Pond Prophet 7th, Nocturnal Hunger, the removal spell 8th, Take Out the Trash 9th, and again, shout out to us saying that this was going to perform well in the data. Tree Guard Duo, the 4-mana 3/4, gives a thing +X and Vigilance until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. And then rounding out, or outside looking in ahead of the homestead, Glide Dive Duo and Polywallop. And again, all of these cards are cards we have talked about and shouted out in the past couple weeks leading up to week 1, except for Savor, and that's on us. Another staggering thing I found from this list, so besides Take Out the Trash, which is the red 2-mana removal spell in 8th there, you don't get to a mono blue or a mono red card on the list until number 34, and that's Dire Downdraft. And there's a lot of blue cards, there are not a lot of blue cards, but a handful of blue cards after that before you get to another red card, which just like that's pretty staggering. Like, say what you will about, commons not mattering, etc. But
yeah, I think the other thing that I think this format, I was just thinking this last night while I was playing, because I was playing and not having any fun at all. I truly, I was not, but I was playing best of one.
Yeah,
I just need, I am done with best of one for this format. And I know I do this like every format, but to be clear, Modern Horizons 3 was awesome enough that I played best of one the entire format, because I just wanted the quick go draft. I enjoyed best of one all the way through Modern Horizons 3. And I think I have learned what I'm going to learn from best of one. And that's the other thing about the data, not to bring it back up, but I'm going to bring it back up in a measured manner, which is all of this data is from best of one, where
yes.
like, if you want to, you can draft green every time. Good players, like, if you really wanted to, you could draft green every time. And that's feeding, those players are the type of people who are going to have 17 lands. But I do still think, despite blue and red bringing up the rear, I do think those 2-color archetypes are still good and playable, just maybe not in best of one so much. Like, I think you're going to need to be in more competitive draft pods before you start to reap the benefits of those things.
I can get behind that, thinking about the blue decks and the red decks. Blue-red specifically is a hard sell for me. I think that deck is like, it is the whole premise of the deck is your cards start small, and then with a little work, you can have your cards be as big as green's cards. It's a really hard sell to be like 2-mana 1/1, 3-mana 2/2. Then we prowess, like, it's tough.
I don't know. I had a really good blue-red deck last night, and I 0-3'd with it in best of one, and I was so tilted and salty. Like, but it was not that. I had the red removal. I had a couple of the red rat. Like, it was a blue-red control deck. I had the rare otter. I had it all, and it was
and still.
And I know, but my deck, if I had taken my deck to Magic Online, or if I'd taken maybe even a best of 3 on Arena, I don't know. Like, that deck, I know the power level of the deck. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
this is not me idly defending. I agree with the premise, your premise of blue red. This was not that kind of a blue red deck. This was a good blue red deck. I agree. I am also not buying into blue red as a generic archetype for signing up to grow your creatures to the size of green creatures. Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to touch on your list here?
We don't need to. Other than that, I just want to say, Carrot Cake's up there, but you should always be picking Baker's Bane Duo ahead of Carrot Cake early in drafts. Intrepid Rabbit, head of the Homestead. Like, you can't take Carrot Cake early. It's a great card. When it slots into green, white, or white, black, whenever you see it, you should take it up and you should put it in your deck. It's a good card. You just can't like let Carrot Cake be the thing that's steering you into white, in my opinion. Much like you can't let, you could kind of with Cash Grab because green is so deep, but I still wouldn't pick Cash Grab ahead of Baker's Bane Duo, for example.
No, I wouldn't either. Well, and the other thing, Cash Grab's a really interesting example, just not in terms of power level, but in terms of going back to what we were talking about with decks doing either a streamline thing or having perhaps packages of. I've definitely found like Cash Grab incentivizes me to go, can I get a little squirrels package going in my whatever green white deck, in my green red deck, so that Cash Grab has, a shot at getting a food out there. And hopefully that food is also useful for me in some other capacity. But yeah, I agree. I mean, it's sort of why, like, again, we're going by it's game in hand win rate. So it's a win rate of when it's in your hand, but that doesn't quite account for what taking cards in the draft lets you do. And that's why ahead of the homestead, I like it in your number 3 spot here. I don't know if that's quite where it is for me, but I was sort of surprised to see ahead of the homestead on the outside of the top 10 looking in, just because it's so flexible. Like
So flexible.
I just see that in draft, like pick 3, pick 4. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Like it's so likely to make my deck. And that's another card that it's just good. Like, sure. Is it good in green and white rabbits? Yeah. Are you playing that in white, black? Absolutely. Are you playing that? Like you're just playing it anywhere because it's so good. Yeah. Love Head of the Homestead. So looking at the top uncommons, it looks to be an Abzan world and we're living in it. And that also will be true when we look at what the archetype's win rate is. I personally have the 3 Abzan decks as the top 3 for me, like green, white, black, green, and black, white are what I think are the 3 best decks. 17 Land says that red, black is performing really well as the 3rd best archetype. We sort of have like 3 decks at the top, 4 decks in the middle, and 3 decks at the bottom. I think blue green is probably up there for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I would put. I still think what we thought
last week.
It's the 3 green decks minus red green plus black white as the 4 top archetypes, and I think I like green enough that I would put white black in 4th, just because I feel so bad every time I'm seeing green cards pass me by that I can't really take once I'm locked into something. But I do think white black is at the power level of those other decks.
And 3 of the 4 blue decks at the bottom of the power rankings on 17 Lands, best of 1. That's blue black at 54%, blue white at 52%, and blue red sub 50% right now, which is pretty yikes to see. I really like blue black. We may not have time this week to talk about it. Maybe that's a next week thing, to do a little sort of like archetype spotlight on a deck that people aren't. Seems like people probably are writing off because of how it's performing in the data, but I've really liked it, and I feel like I kind of get how the deck comes together and what pieces are key, etc.
We should do it, because if people get on the green train, and this might be the week that the format kind of shifts.
All right. Well, we'll chat about blue black in just a second. Some things about the top uncommons, and we'll run through this list real quick. Apologies if you don't know these cards. We've got Vine Reap Mentor, the black green signpost, Hunter's Talent, the aforementioned Doomblade, and Win the Game.
Good lord.
Thought Stalker Warlock is the 3 mana black lizard 2/2 menace that can Thoughtseize them if they lost life or just they discard a card. Beauregard Mentor is the green white signpost. Wix Patrol is the black 6-drop that gives something -X, where X is the highest mana value among things in your graveyard. Downwind Ambusher. Shout out to you for talking this up 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now, I guess. This is the 3 and a black 4/2 flash. You can either finish something off that got dealt damage or give something -1/-1 until end of turn. This was similar to seeing like how high Carrot Cake was. I had like felt Downwind Ambusher being good, and then seeing it in the top 10 uncommons, I was like, okay, like I'm in. I will like I have since adjusted it and bumped it up as a like no, you don't pass this card if you can help it.
It's very good. I mean, the when it's best is when it's Flame Tongue Kabu and it picks off an X1. Like last night, I played Shoreline Looter on 3, and my opponent flashed in Downwind Ambusher and killed my Shoreline Looter the next turn. Like when I attacked with it, and you just like crumble a little bit and die on the inside. But it's also great because there's just tons of small things running around that you can chump attack with. Like, you're going to get your opponent one way or the other.
Well, and there's also like 2/3s jamming into each other. Like you like sort of make an attack and then your opponent's like, well, I can bounce my 2/4 off your 2/3, whatever, and be good. And then you're like, nah, you're getting got.
It's very versatile, and the body's a real sized body. This is the best this type of card has ever been. And the -1/-1 thing just really pushes it into an excellent card.
And speaking of, I was really shocked to see Shoreline Looter so high in this list. The one in a blue, unblockable, and when it deals damage to a player, if you have Threshold, you just draw a card, and if not, you loot. I really like this card. Like you had sort of been talking about blue black like a week ago or so, and then I've been drafting blue black a lot this week. Shoreline Looter is just everything that deck wants. It's so weird because I'm so off of like 2-mana 1/1, can't really engage it in combat, but like it's just not that. It's just more of like a fragile enchantment for the deck, kind of, right? Like, but the fact that it's payoff plus enabler is so good. And seeing it so high in this rankings, despite blue black not performing super well, is also interesting that maybe this belongs in other decks too. I can't really imagine it does, but like, are you playing this? You're just playing this anywhere.
That's what I was saying last week. You would just play it in every blue deck because it goes back to the card draw card filtering thing. Like this format is kind of core set-ish that way, and this is a single card for 2 mana that says you get to draw an appropriate ratio of lands and spells. And then if it lives past that, like you're going to get to just start drawing cards and win the game. It just makes your draws work.
Yeah. Fell, the 1 in a black removal spell at sorcery speed, is an 8th. Harvest Right, Host, the 3/3 rabbit that pumps other things when rabbits come into play or draws cards. And Patchwork Banner coming in at number 10, the Manolith that gives +1/+1 to a creature type of your choice. What do we think? What do you think about Patchwork Banner just showing up there?
I wish that card weren't in the format. Yeah. It just says if your draft is going well, it's going even better. Like, it's just it's not a very fun card to have in the format.
And kind of surprised, just on the outside looking in, is Fireglass Mentor at 11. That's the red-black 2/1 that like lets you draw cards. Again, going back to your point of these aggro decks needing just a little bit of something to keep the gas flowing, to filter out, to mitigate the flood and the screw. And Mentor does that. So maybe I need to wrap my head around this little fragile 2/1.
Yeah, this is a good card. You've like it's a couple weeks now you've pushed back against it.
Yeah,
I just think it's good.
All right, I know. Well, I'm gonna keep pushing, but I see it. I'm reading all the things. All right, I want to chat really quick about blue black before we get into some drafts. So drafted blue black the most so far, I think, of any archetype, or at least when I wrote this, that was true. It's a powerful deck. It's definitely underdrafted at the moment. And I would say certainly in best of one, it's likely to continue to be underdrafted based on how it's going. Like people are going to see that it's not doing well. People are going to try and get their way into green. And I think certainly if you're feeling like green is, if we get into a point where it's like, man, green is overdrafted, I want to go in avoiding green, whatever, like blue black is a great spot to go into. And it really is trying to turbo threshold by whatever means necessary to then get the payoffs.
Right. The most important thing is, and not even turboing it, but surprise thresholding. Like if you can get threshold a turn or two before your opponent expects you to be able to get threshold, oftentimes that's a very powerful turn for you.
Right. Like, yeah, I've definitely had like Mind Whisker in play, like, and had 4 cards in my graveyard. So that's the 3/2 that lets you surveil on upkeep. And if you have threshold, your opponent's creatures get -1/-0. So you have like Mind Whisker. Okay, I've got 4 cards. Upkeep, surveil the card into the bin. There's 5. And then boom, play Daggerfang Duo and mill 2. And then you're like, oh, and I have threshold now, all of a sudden.
Yes.
So cards like Persistent Marshstalker, again, a card you shouted out, turned me on to it. This is the 1 in a black 3/1 rat, gets +1/+0 for each other rat you control. And when you have threshold, when you attack with a rat, you can pay 2 in a black to bring it back tapped and attacking from your graveyard. Card is such a huge pull into this deck. I think it's just good like in any black deck. And then once you have it, you're like hoping you have some other rats somewhere to bring it back. But in a blue black deck, it's a real house. And Mind Whisker, as I just talked about, those are real reasons to go after threshold. But like even Shoreline Looter, another real reason to go after threshold. Like when that's just drawing you a card every turn, it's a big game.
Yes.
Daggerfang Duo, the 2 in a black 3/2 Death Touch, Rat Squirrel, ETB you can mill to, and Bellowing Crier. This is a secret blue black card in my mind. This is the 1 in a blue 2/1 Frog ETB loot. Those are the best common enablers for Threshold. Light Shell Duo is fine if you can afford the 4-drop. That's the 4 mana, 3/4 prowess in blue that surveils 2 on ETB. You just basically treat the surveil 2 like mill 2. But sometimes your 4-drop slot is a little clogged. Light Shell Duo, you can just get last pick. Like, you're never going to have to spend a pick on that card. So if your deck needs that enabler, like that way to get stuff into the bin, you'll get it. And then you're just like good black removal, 2-for-1s, recursion, flashback spells you can incidentally mill or loot away. And the deck is strong. I don't know. And it's like really, it's fun to draft, it's fun to build, fun to play, and I think
It's
has
fun to
legs.
play, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Light Shell Duo is one, not having gone up in my pick order necessarily. Like you said, you can just get it last pick, but I think a card I have more respect for as I've played with and against it more, the 3/4 that can surveil 2 and has prowess. I just miss the prowess text on there. I think like it's a card that blue gets that is big enough to brawl with the green creatures.
Right. Yeah, it's a really good point, right? I mean, like 3/4, and then if you have untapped mana, they kind of have to respect it as potentially being bigger.
And have you found, because I've drafted blue black 2 different ways, like as aggro and as control, have you found that you're more consistently aggressive and turbo threshold like the signpost would lead you to believe?
Yeah, that's been my main. I haven't done any like that deck you talked about being like more blue spells controlling with black removal. I haven't done that yet. I've been much more doing like turbo threshold, get the payoffs, win.
Yes. Okay, cool. All right, that takes us into a couple of draft logs here. We're just going to kind of discuss the different types of picks you're going to face in draft because, again, I do think the format's pretty straightforward in that there are some really hard picks and that you can have some really hard drafts, but they all fall into 2 kind of categories of decisions to me. And the first category is when you're starting in a color, like, so let's say you start green, for example, as we'll see here. You start green, and then you have a choice between taking another weaker green card versus branching into maybe one of the signpost uncommons. Like you're green, and then you have choices of another green card or Lily Splash Mentor or Vine Reap Mentor, the black green gold squirrels card or the black green gold frogs card. Those are hard picks because like my gut usually in most formats says, well, let's take the gold card and let's go after it. But you can really get yourself in some trouble doing that in this format, in my opinion. Like my default in this format is to take a slightly weaker card that keeps me more flexible. I'm curious as to your thoughts on that. Are you operating the same way?
I sort of am, though. You're kind of like the conversation we're having here is kind of unlocking something for me. I'm wondering if that strategy works when you're green. Like, I feel like I wonder if starting green specifically, you might be more incentivized to just get deeper into green rather than, try and shoot the moon on a deck versus if I start blue, like let's say I take Mockingbird, pack one, pick one, the X and a blue 1/1 flyer that can clone something, but it also
Which is
has
incredible,
flying.
by the way.
Card's excellent. Like it's one of the few like blue cards that I'm like, oh yeah, I'll start a draft blue with this. But as soon as I take Mockingbird, I'm not trying to get deeper into blue. Like I don't want to be like, let's just see what happens with these great blue cards. Like I want to find a good blue deck, right? So I'm gonna take a Lily Splash Mentor next if I can. I'm gonna take like maybe get into blue black if I can, and probably steer away from taking red cards or just getting into blue red or blue white just because I don't like or know those decks very well. But green, I think, affords you the opportunity just because green's cards are good and have like just they have inherent synergy and also just inherent like stats. Like they just do their thing no matter what deck they're in. That I think green has me doing that, but other colors, I think I'm a little bit more inclined to find a home sooner.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I think that was what I was going to get to next, which is that you also have to feel out the power level gap, right? And in green, there's likely to be a narrower power level
Yeah,
gap
there
because
you
green
go.
cards are so good. But if you're blue, like you're not going to be seeing blue commons, blue uncommons maybe that are powerful, but you're going to have to go after the gold cards because that's where the power is at.
Right.
For
Yeah.
those archetypes. So that checks out with me.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so if we take a look at this draft, pack one, pick one, you slam Innkeeper's Talent,
Oof.
one in the green, rare. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. You can level it up for a single green to give permanents you control with counters on them ward 1. And then for 3 and a green, if you put one or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead. Constructed playable
Is
Innkeeper's
it?
Talent?
Is it?
Getting those planeswalkers ticking up even faster.
Oh,
I've seen lots of
okay.
juice on Twitter about Innkeeper's talent.
Does that mean once you have this on level 3, does that mean your planeswalkers come in with twice as many counters?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shout out to constructed players, I guess.
Who cares? All right. So you slam that pack one, pick one. Pack one, pick two. This is where kind of the decision point comes in. And this is you essentially boil down to two cards here. Brambleguard Veteran, 1 green for a 3/4. Whenever you expend 4 raccoons you control, get +1/+1 and gain vigilance until end of turn. And then the rare in the pack is Camellia the Seed Miser, 1 black-green for a 3/3 rare with Menace. Other squirrels you control have Menace. Whenever you sacrifice 1 or more foods, create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token. It's a 3/3, and you can pay 2 to forage to put a +1/+1 counter on each other squirrel you control.
This is really tough. This specific example, just because Camellia is so nuts with Innkeeper's talent, like doubling like put 2 counters on all your squirrels when you activate Camellia.
But do you need to?
No, you don't need to, but
that's the
I'm
thing.
just thinking of the popping off possibilities. This specific example I think is really hard for me, but so the thing you're distilling this down to is you take Veteran and you get to just get deeper into green, and you don't have to decide what you're pairing green with. You take Camellia and you're trying to shoot the moon, and when you do shoot the moon and get a great squirrels deck, you're going to be thrilled. But that's not going to happen most of the time. I don't think. I mean, you might get a decent squirrels deck, but you're not going to maybe shoot the moon with it. And you might end up passing up on the possibilities of a great green blue deck, a great green white deck. And how much of a gap is there between like Brambleguard Veteran plus Innkeeper's Talent in any green deck versus Camellia and Fingers Crossed?
Right. Well, and the other thing, I took Brambleguard Veteran here, and I think Brambleguard Veteran is right, but Camellia's broken, like really good. So it's hard in that sense, but Innkeeper's Talent is already so powerful that like you've already got a premium bomb. If you can just get a great green deck around Innkeeper's Talent, it doesn't need to be an insane version because Innkeeper's Talent is so strong. But I think you could also distill this example down to like slightly less powerful cards,
Right.
where let's say you start with Brambleguard Veteran, and then you've got a choice between,
let's say it's Baker's Bane Duo and Vine Reap Mentor.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, sure. That's great. You start with Brambleguard Veteran, and you get a choice between Baker's Bane Duo and Vine Reap Mentor, like a powered down version of this example.
Of this pick. That becomes a lot clearer to me.
That you're supposed to take Baker's Bane Duo, right?
Yes.
But I think this one's even more clear than that somehow, because Innkeeper's Talent's so broken. Like you just need to end up in a functional green archetype, and you're gonna win every time you draw Innkeeper's Talent. You don't need Innkeeper's Talent to pop off with Camellia.
But think of the Twitter equity, the screenshot equity. I don't know. Camellia is so nuts. This is hard. Like I think this is a lot closer than you're giving it credit for, personally.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And to full disclosure, I did end up drafting black-green squirrels, which surprised me.
Well, but
and felt fine about not having Camellia, and was like, initially I was like, well, do I really want to draft squirrels after passing Camellia? And then I was like, sure.
If it's open, yeah.
Yeah, if it's open from the right.
Yeah.
More power to me.
Yeah, for sure. That's the thing that like, it's not like taking Brambleguard Veteran closes the door on black-green for you. By passing Camellia, you're saying, well, I can't draft black-green. I can draft one of the 3 other green decks. It's like, no, you can still draft squirrels, which, as evidenced, you end up doing.
Yeah. The other type of pick that you're going to be likely to face in the format is when you're starting in a color or a color pair, and then you're going like 180 into a color that maybe you're blue-green to start, and you're going into black. Or maybe you're green to start and you're taking, I don't know, a black-white. That's what we're going to see in one of these examples, a black-white gold card, to potentially give yourselves outs to pivot. And I think these are the harder picks to decide on, like when and how to hedge. So if we take a look at this first one, you start out of a very weak pack one, pick one, with a bad card, as we decided last week, Clifftop Lookout. This is 2 and a green for a 1/2 reach. When it ETBs, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. Put that card on the battlefield tapped, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Would you pick this out of this pack? Did you take Sonar Strike?
No, I think I would take this. Like, it's fine. It's fine and it's green. This pack is pretty weak.
That's what I decided. I just decided if the pack was horrible, I just wanted to take a card of the color I was most likely to want to be, which
Yeah.
was green. And I do think Clifftop Lookout, I've played with it more, and it is very good in frogs. I think it is highly mediocre outside of frogs, but the frogs deck wants to hit every land drop possible.
Yeah, because you have so many mana sinks in that deck, or like when you're picking stuff up, you want to be able to recast it. I agree.
Pack 1, pick 2, another super weak pack where you take Baker's Bane Duo, 1 and a green 2/2, ETBs create a food token, and when you expend 4, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. There's nothing else in consideration there. Maybe a 3-tree Scribe as the 1 and a green 2/3. Whenever it or another creature leaves the battlefield without dying, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. But for the purposes of example, it makes no difference which one of those you take. Well, I am curious though. Are you on Baker's Bane Duo over 3-tree Scribe?
I think so. I mean, it depends. If I'm like, I want to draft frogs, but I don't know if like 3-tree Scribe is good. No, I think you just take Baker's Bane. Baker's Bane Duo is nuts.
To me, frogs is the least good of the 3 green decks outside of red green. I think my power rankings would go
Yeah,
green,
I agree.
white, green, black, green, blue.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and Baker's Bane Duo is way better in green, white, or green, black.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then pack 1, pick 3. This is where things get interesting.
This is really interesting.
So, no commons in consideration. First,
there are good green commons in the pack, right?
Yes, there's a Tree Guard Duo. There's a Sticky Tongue Sentinel. Like green is looking like it's flowing. I mean, but it's early. It's way too early to put much stock in that.
Correct.
Bushy Bodyguard as your first uncommon. 1 and a green for a 2/1 with Offspring 2. When this creature enters, you can forage. If you do, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Card goes very well with the Baker's Bane Duo you just picked up. Versus a rare still in the pack, which is Lunar Convocation. White-black for a rare enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, each opponent loses 1 life. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained and lost life this turn, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying, and you can pay 1 and a black +2 life to draw a card.
This card is really tough to beat.
It's oppressive
in a black-white deck. Yeah, it's really good. Man, this is hard. And I have faced these picks, and I'm sure our listeners have as well. These kinds of picks are really hard. Like, I'm looking at this right now, and and maybe it's just because we just did the get deeper into green conversation. And it's also interesting if this is not green card, but it's black card, black, or I guess, whatever. Red card, though I can't imagine getting deeper into red early. But like, I kind of just want to take Bushy Bodyguard. Is that crazy?
I don't think it's crazy. It's a really hard pick, but you have to know I think you just have to know
what you're doing,
what each pick implies, and how it's going to affect your draft. Because if you take Bushy Bodyguard in this moment, to me, if I take Bushy Bodyguard, I'm saying I'm drafting green no matter what at this point. Because like I'm not interested in any of the non-green archetypes if I've already got this good of a green start.
Mm-hmm.
And like the only non-green deck I really want to go after is black-white.
Yeah.
So like if I'm shipping Lunar Convocation here, and this is a little different in that like the Camellia pick, you can still get a great green-black deck, but like your black-white deck is going to miss Lunar Convocation so much. And if you're not pivoting off green for Lunar Convocation here, when and how and why are you pivoting off of green, And
it's not like your green start, like, yeah, you have the like best common, you have Baker's Bane Duo, but like Clifftop Lookout isn't anything. So like, do you really need to give that much stock? Like you take Bushy Bodyguard, and arguably Bushy Bodyguard is the best of the 3 cards you have in your pile at the moment.
I think it's comparable to Baker's Bane Duo. They're similar power level.
So it's a good point. Like Lunar Convocation, again, you get to shoot the moon.
But it's not even shooting the moon. I think here's the reason I like taking Lunar Convocation. You can take it here, and if the next pack doesn't have black or white cards, you don't have to follow it down that road. But if you take Bushy Bodyguard and there's no green in the next pack, you feel horrible.
Can we go a little deeper? Because I feel like as I click through the next few picks, my anxiety levels are skyrocketing. And so I want to like talk through what happens after this point, because I think that's interesting too. So you take Lunar Convocation. Then the next,
because I think that's the strongest signal we've seen. That's in my mind the best reason to do it. We've seen no power. We see a very powerful card. This is a direction. I'm looking for a direction.
I'm on board. Then you take Fell next pick. That's the clear best card in the pack. 1 and a black sorcery, destroy target creature. Great. And like that gets you deeper into 2 different paths, right? If you end up white-black, awesome. If you end up going green-black, Awesome.
awesome. Right. Yes. That's the other reason I think it's okay to take Lunar Convocation is that you can draft black and be in the middle of both archetypes.
Pick 5 stresses me out. So
it doesn't me at all. I love my spot after pick 5.
So here are the cards that I see as options. There's really Life Creed Duo, 1 and a white, 1/2 flyer. Whenever another creature you control enters, you gain a life. Like bread and butter, exactly what the black-white deck wants to be doing on turn 2. There is a Lily Splash Mentor, 2 green blue, 4/4 reach. Pay 1 green blue to exile another creature you control at sorcery speed, and then return to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. I guess it's between those two. I'm peeping Stargaze. Again, shout out to you for this card last week, the X black draw spell that loses you a little life. Like, this is just so good in black green and black white because you have the life to play with. And like doing this for 5 or 6 mana is just game over.
Yes.
Because you're just drawing 3 spells. Like it's not just 5 mana draw 3. It's like you're drawing 3 spells. Or if you need a land drop, you can take a land. But like it's pretty wild. So I think that's like in the conversation because I think I want one of those in all of my black-white decks if possible. But like taking Lily Splash Mentor makes me nervous. Like, why aren't you just taking Life Creed Duo here?
Because so here's my thought process. I still don't feel committed to anything yet. And like every draft right now, my goal is to be green blue, green black, green white, or white black. And by taking Lily Splash Mentor here, I have inroads into all of those decks at this point. Like I can be blue-green with a duo, a lookout, and a Lily Splash. I can be green-black by just abandoning the Mentor and the Lunar Convocation. I can be black-white. And if I'm supposed to be black-white, I want to be wheeling Life Creed Duo. And I'm not going to out of this particular pack here because there's not enough picks left, but I don't want to have to be picking Life Creed Duo pick 5 while I'm still feeling out where I'm supposed to be in the draft.
So now you've got roads to green, black. You take Lily Splash Mentor. You have roads to green, black, green, blue, and black, white at the moment. Do you have a sense of when you're trying to decide? How much leverage do you give yourself to like next pack? Are you taking, let's say you see Intrepid Rabbit next pack? You're taking that and bouncing back to black white, and that's not even that good in black white.
Probably not. Yeah. Like I think by taking Lily Splash Mentor here, I'm saying I'm the least likely to be black white at this point. But
that's
I also
weird
think,
to me.
I think Lily Splash Mentor is as good in blue green as Lunar Convocation is in black white, or approaching close to that. Like Lily Splash Mentor is the linchpin card for blue green.
So what you're saying is you think, like much like Lunar Convocation pick 3, Lily Splash Mentor pick 5 is like, what the heck is this doing here?
Yes, that's how I feel about the card.
Okay.
And then I'm fine abandoning. Essentially, I'm only abandoning Lunar Convocation with this pick.
You're abandoning.
And I can be. I'm no, because I can still be black green and not play the Lily Splash Mentor, and I could still be drafting green, like because that's what I want to do the most. Is I want to draft green. So maybe if I feel that strongly about it,
you should have taken Bushy Bodyguard.
Should have taken Bushy Bodyguard, and there's a case for that too. And I was maybe feeling that here with the Lily Splash Mentor pick because this was a gut check for me where I was like, wow, I really do just want to be green.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for this format is knowing your tendencies because it helps in those spots where you're going to face those types of tough picks.
Yeah. You've sort of talked me off the ledge isn't quite the right phrase, but you've definitely like been in my ear when we've done draft logs in formats past where you've been like, yeah, you're taking this card, but like, what is when do you actually think you're gonna give this the weight you're saying you're giving it, right?
Right.
And like,
yes.
Feels like there's a similar thing happening here for Lunar Convocation, where you're like, I recognize this is powerful, but I'm really just gonna be prioritizing green cards anyway.
Well, but like, I'm trying to think of a card, like for example, if there were the 1/3 Death Touch Bat at uncommon here, I think I would take that over Lily Splash Mentor. Maybe I'm just underrating how important Life Creed Duo is.
I think
for black white.
I mean, I think that both can be true. Like you are hoping to wheel it, but I also think you might have to like stake your claim a little bit. Or like if you think you can wheel it and get those later, like Stargaze is really good. You could
Stargaze
take
is really good, yeah.
Stargaze here.
You could take Stargaze here. It's tough though. I think for me, this pick boils down to I see Lily Splash Mentor as a linchpin card for an archetype, whereas Stargaze and Life Creed Duo are not.
And I think also the other thing that is where I think maybe our differences are coming in is that I think I like black white more than blue green.
Oh, okay.
I do have the 3 Abzan decks at the top of my list, and then blue green is number 4, just slightly.
So then Stargaze makes a lot of sense for you here because you could be black white and it will still be great in black green.
Yeah, right. So that's really probably what the pick should be for me. I think you can just make a case that that's like, because it does that, because it's like Stargaze is going to be great in black white or black green, and you still have those outs.
But this goes back to a broader limited point where, like, if you hear Ethan and I discussing this, and I do think it's possible in this spot, if we have different rankings of the archetypes and what we like to do, that Lily Splash Mentor could be right for me and Stargaze could be right for you based on where we want to go or where we expect to end up. Because this is a draft where you are largely forging your path through it, right? Like, it's not a path where stuff is being dictated to you by what you're seeing. Like, you have choices. And it's so important to have an archetype ranking in your head and a power level ranking of cards in your head so that you can make those types of informed decisions for yourself.
All right. Tons of great stuff to talk about. I mean, not surprising. It's week 1, but it does sound like you and I think, I came in being pretty low on the format, so I had nowhere to go but up. Sounds like you may have come down a little bit.
Like medium plus on the format, and I think I am now medium minus territory, because I think for me the thing I enjoy the most is the discovery phase, and I don't feel like this format has tons to offer there. Like, I had thoughts about what I thought it would be going into it, and it has largely been what I thought it was going to be. The biggest surprise was how good green was. Like, seeing after playing early access, seeing, oh no, it's not white, it really is green. That was the biggest discovery phase for me, and I wish there were, but I don't think there's tons more to be.
Are you popping off with Builder's Talent yet?
I have not popped off with Builder's Talent yet, but my enthusiasm for doing that is down because it's just way suboptimal.
Channel Big Score Ben from Streets of New Capenna. Bring him to bear in the coming weeks, and you'll have a good time.
But I'm losing gems. My gem count is...
Oh my God.
Gem count is way down.
Just embrace your whale status on Arena. I think we're going to chat Sealed next week. We've got the Arena Championship qualifier will have come and gone. So there are going to be some folks qualified for that. But then we've also got, I think is it the week after is the Arena Open?
The Arena Open is the week of the 17th, 18th of August.
18th, of course, because I'm out of town that weekend, so I won't get to play. But
you'll be spared from the pain of going 3-1 into 0-1 drop.
Yeah, that's my favorite move on Sundays. But so we're gonna have a lot of Sealed under our belts, and we'll chat about Sealed next week, I think, touching on that, and hopefully maybe do some more archetype spotlights if we feel like we've discovered maybe some things that blue red or blue white are doing that are not reflected in the community at large, all that stuff. But I think this sort of where we're at right now, I don't expect the pendulum swinging that much.
Yes, I would agree. And on that note, good place to wrap us up. Thank you, as always, to Salty Pretzels for our intro and outro music. Make sure you give it a listen.
You can find all of our content on our website, lordsoflimited.com. Links to our 17 lands tier list. If you want to see our rankings of the cards, you have our episode backlog, our YouTube channel, our respective Twitch streams, our merch, courtesy of TeePublic, our Patreon page, all of that stuff at lordsoflimited.com.
If you've got any feedback about the show or any questions, shoot us an email at lordsoflimited@gmail.com.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of Lords of Limited.
Thanks, everybody. See you later.